Hey everyone, this is Fame Magazine. My name is Savannah Jewel, and today we're chatting with Daniel Andre, writer and director of Running on Empty. Daniel, how are you?
I'm doing well. How you doing, Savannah?
Doing great. It's a really nice day. Feels like a brisk September 1st. You know what I mean?
Awesome.
Really good on the East Coast. Yeah.
I
Uh,
missed the brisk autumn, early autumn days.
yes, big fan. I'm really excited to talk to you today about your film. I really enjoyed watching it. I found
Oh.
it to be such a unique approach on the story of life and death. As a first feature film, what inspired you to write a story like this like, the approach on making light of that dichotomy of life and death? What was that like?
Yeah, it was. I think when you're trying to figure out what am I going to make for my first film, it's a pretty big question. And so I think I just drew from something that I felt maybe everyone can relate to. And I think obviously as human beings, at some point, we're all going to experience death in some way. And I sort of took that idea and ran with it. And then I also I'm a big fan of dark comedies. I'm a big fan of sort of out of the box, left of center type of comedies. And so I kind of took that idea and then matched it with sort of inspiration from the films I grew up watching, like Martin Scorsese, After Hours, Punch Drunk Love, Paul Thomas Anderson, those kind of strange independent type of films.
Yeah, I was gonna ask you because I heard in another interview that you described it as kind of like an anti-rom-com inspired by
Mhm.
80s films. So like, do you have any specific influences from those other like favorite films that you kind of picked and grabbed from and maybe try to apply to this film?
Just one I can think of off the top of my head. Somebody had asked me about how the whole death date thing in the film is very much, it's sort of in the background. It's not explained too much. And that was by design to where in films like this, I'm a fan of the films to where it has these sort of big ideas or big concepts, but it's just kind of in the background. So if you look at, a lot of Charlie Kaufman films, all of the characters are in these weird, almost parallel universes.
Yeah.
But it's very much just in the background, and the story focuses on the characters and the character's journey versus the technical aspects of whatever is defining the situation that they're in.
Yeah. The concept of I can't remember the name of it, but setting up someone after their death into a picture that you would find them in like their regular life. Where did that come from? I didn't know that was a thing until watching this film. I'm not describing it correctly, but I know you know what I mean.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's funny. I think originally, I had the whole mortician idea down. And then in doing research on funeral homes and the mortician process, I came across these things. In the film, we call them adventure funerals.
Mhm.
But there's actually a thing called extreme funeral. So if you go and Google it right now,
Mhm.
you'll see that people actually do similar things where they'll make like a mock-up of their favorite car and put them in a car that's like spinning around, or playing cards or doing something that they love doing in life.
Mhm.
So it's actually a thing, and I don't know if they do it in the US, but I think it would also kind of go in line with how other cultures view death as more of a celebration of life versus sort of the more traditional funeral, wake, casket type of thing.
Yeah, I think as a society, we definitely have a very specific view on it. Um, I I've never really like fully expanded my knowledge on how other cultures view it, but I know it's a little more of like a lighter approach and more of um, like a more important dedication on this specific person. But coming into kind of the multiple hats that you're wearing as an artist, how did you integrate those like creative skills into your filmmaking process? Like a filmmaker, also an actor, a director, a writer.
Yeah, I think it sort of, I always knew that this was sort of where I would end up was directing films. I started acting when I was 5. When I was, I think, about 10 years old, and we got our first camcorder, I kind of commandeered it for myself, and I started making my own little movies.
Mhm.
But I've done, after acting, I DJ'd for a long time. I produced music. But all of that kind of went into to helping me become a director, because by the time I got the opportunity to finally sit down and write my first film and make my first film, not only did I have all the creative aspects of being an actor or a musician, and an artist behind me, but through the years of producing music, and then I've also worked as an editor. I've produced films. I learned enough of, I've worked in post-production for years, so I learned enough of the technical aspect to sort of match the creativity. So it kind of gave me what I think is the most useful blend of skills to work with both the creatives on set, but then also with more of the technical aspects of producing a film, writing a film, and making the film.
Yeah, with such a blend of experiences, kind of dabbling in all of these areas of creativity, was there anything that specifically that helped you find your unique vision and not trying too much to maybe mimic somebody else's?
Yeah, I think I've just always sort of, most of the people who know me throughout my life kind of know in all of my artistic endeavors, I've always sort of been the driving factor behind it. And I think as an artist, as almost any kind of artist, you have to be your biggest advocate. Because ultimately at the end of the day, nobody is going to care more about your art or your movie than you are. And so I think you have to figure out, or at least be grounded in your creative vision, in order to make that possible. And also to convince other people to hop on this ride with you and come along and invest their time and their skills to help you bring this to life.
For sure. Do you have any advice for someone that's trying to explore and decide on the themes of their first feature film? Any like must-haves or must-dos?
You know what? I think it's different for everybody. I can't even really understand. I'm still trying to wrap my head around how this kind of all came together as it did. But I think the biggest thing is not giving up. Is believing in yourself and also not setting a timeline. I think, especially being in Los Angeles, a lot of people come here, or, even if you're not in LA, and you want to start writing screenplays or you want to make a movie. I think we're very much in our society, everything's on a timeline and we have to do it by this time or that time. And, I remember I spoke with a pretty established TV director, I think while I was writing it or after I'd written it, and I was just I was telling her how because I'm going to make it before I'm this age. And that's really important. And she just kind of gave me, it wasn't an eye roll, but it was kind of like, it'll happen when it's supposed to happen. Yeah. And I think once I took myself and my timeline and what I wanted out of the equation and just focused on the project, that's when everything really came together. But I think the overall point is not to set any timelines. It's going to take as long as it takes. And just in that time, use that time to develop yourself. Even if, you might write a script and it might take 6 years to make. However, those 6 years, if you use them wisely, your script will be the best script it can be by the time you get to production. And so rather than look at that time as a negative, look at that time as time you can use to improve yourself as an artist.
Yeah, definitely the sense of urgency is like overwhelming in this generation. It's really crazy. I totally understand. I try to dabble in as many creative things as possible, and I do feel that pressure, so I totally understand, and I try to remind myself it literally doesn't matter. It's going to happen when it happens. So that's comforting to know that someone that has been successful in doing it feels the same. Yep. Coming back to the film, is there anything that you want your audience to take away from it after the credits roll?
Yeah, I think it's exploring death in a very humorous way, but it does ask some important questions. It does kind of make us hopefully realize what's really important in life, but also not to take it too seriously. And that's sort of, even though there are serious and heartfelt subject matter in the film, it was by design meant to not be taken seriously, to follow Mort in this journey, to learn whatever he ultimately learns.
Yeah, amazing. I love it. Last question for you. With your next project involving biopics, right? The Last Will, am I getting that right? I'm curious to know, how do you plan to bring the same kind of heartfelt approach to telling real life stories?
I think it's just piggybacking off of everything that I did in this film, but learned from making this film, and to just sort of to use it to grow as an artist and as a filmmaker. And I just want to mention there's another project. I don't know if it's on there, but it's actually based off of the dating service from Running on Empty called Till Death Do Us Part. And we have a series that's in development about that, and so I'm super excited to get to further explore that whole aspect of the film.